Take off your uniform. Now. The words cut through the hotel lobby like a slap. Mara stood frozen, her cleaning cart beside her, a mop handle still in her hand. She could feel every eye in the place turned toward her. Front desk staff, guests on the couches, even the security guard near the door. Mr. Langston, the hotel's operations manager, didn't lower his voice. He wanted everyone to hear. "You people come here to work, not to play hero," he said, pointing at Mara like she was dirt on his shoe. "You embarrassed us in front of paying guests. You're done." Mara opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. The lobby went quiet, not because people didn't care, but because no one wanted to be the next target. And then Mr. Langston said the line that made Mara's stomach drop. "Poor girls like you should be grateful you got hired at all." A guest nearby lifted a phone, recording. Mara swallowed hard, because what Mr. Langston didn't know was this. The person Mara had embarrassed him for was not who he thought, and what happened next would shake the entire hotel by morning. Mara Rivera was 26, small in height, quiet in voice, and always moving like she had somewhere urgent to be. She cleaned the Belmont Grand Hotel from morning to night. Marble floors, mirrored hallways, conference rooms that smelled like expensive cologne. Most people didn't notice her. And honestly, that was how Mara survived. Her life was simple. Wake up at 4:30 a.m., catch 2 buses, clock in before sunrise, clean until her arms ached, then go home to a 1-bedroom apartment she shared with her little brother, Eli. Eli was 12. He had asthma, the kind that could turn a normal night into an emergency. So Mara did everything carefully. She didn't talk back. She didn't cause problems. She didn't get noticed, because she needed that job. She needed the health plan. She needed the paycheck. And she needed the quiet respect that came with being reliable, even if no one ever said thank you. That morning, Eli had looked up at her with sleepy eyes and asked, "Will you be home early today?" Mara forced a smile. "I'll try." Then she packed his inhaler in his backpack, kissed his forehead, and promised herself she'd pick up an extra shift if she needed to. She didn't know her whole life was about a flip, because of one small act of integrity. The Belmont Grand was hosting a VIP hospitality summit that week. Big money, big names, big egos. Staff had been warned all week. No mistakes, no delays, no drama. Mr. Langston walked around like a king, barking orders, adjusting ties, and smiling fake smiles at guests with expensive watches. Mara stayed in the background like she always did. She cleaned quietly near the elevators when she noticed something strange. An elderly woman stood near the check-in line, gripping a worn purse to her chest. Her hair was gray, pulled back in a simple bun. Her shoes looked old, like she had walked a long way. She didn't look like the kind of guest that usually stayed at the Belmont. The front desk clerk barely glanced up. "Next," the clerk said, voice bored. The elderly woman stepped forward. "Excuse me, I think my reservation." The clerk cut her off. "Name?" "Dorothy Wells." The clerk typed fast and frowned. "There's nothing under that name." Dorothy's eyes widened. "That can't be right. My nephew booked it." He said he sent the confirmation. The clerk sighed like she was annoyed by air itself. "Ma'am, this hotel is fully booked for the summit. If you don't have a reservation, you can step aside." Dorothy's cheeks turned pink. "Could you just check again? Please." A man in a suit behind her snapped. "Lady, move. Some of us have meetings." Dorothy flinched. Mara watched from a few steps away. Her mop paused midair. She saw Dorothy's hands trembling slightly, and then she saw the thing that made her heart tighten. Dorothy reached into her purse and pulled out a folded paper confirmation. She held it out gently. The clerk didn't take it. Instead, the clerk leaned back and said loud enough for others to hear, "We don't accept printed scams, ma'am." A few people chuckled. Dorothy's eyes glistened. That's when Mara stepped forward. Not loud, not dramatic, just firm. "Hi," Mara said, offering a small smile. "Can I help you for a second?" The clerk's eyes narrowed. "Housekeeping. This is not your area." Mara nodded politely. "I know, but she has a confirmation. Maybe it's under a different name." The clerk rolled her eyes. Or maybe she's trying to sneak into a VIP hotel. Dorothy's lips parted, shocked. I'm not sneaking. I'm just... Mara held out her hand to Dorothy. May I see it? Dorothy passed her the paper like it was fragile. Mara looked at it closely, and there it was, a confirmation number, a date, a room type, and, most important, an email header stamp with the Belmont Grand's own logo. This wasn't fake. Mara turned slightly toward the clerk. It's real. The number starts with BG. That's our system format. The clerk's face shifted, just a little. Behind the desk, the supervisor glanced up and whispered something to clerk. Mr. Langston noticed a commotion from across the lobby. He walked over quickly, smile already forming, until he saw Mara. His smile fell. What is this? He asked sharply. Mara kept her voice calm. Sir, this guest has a confirmation. I think it was entered wrong, maybe under a different name. Mr. Langston didn't even look at the paper. He looked at Mara. You are housekeeping, he said. Yes, sir. So why are you standing behind my front desk, making us look incompetent in front of Summit guests? Mara's stomach dropped. I'm not trying to. I just didn't want her to be embarrassed. Mr. Langston's eyes flashed. Embarrassed? He repeated like it was a joke. You want to talk about embarrassment? You stepping into a VIP situation like you belong here is embarrassment. Mara felt the heat rush to her face. Dorothy looked between them, confused and ashamed. And then Mr. Langston did something cruel. He took the confirmation from Mara's hand and held it up. Look, he said loudly, turning to the people waiting in line. This is what happens when staff forgets their place. People stared. A couple guests smirked. The security guard shifted but stayed silent. Mr. Langston turned back to Mara. You're done. Take off your uniform and leave. Mara's throat tightened. Sir, please, I was just... He cut her off. Poor girls like you should be grateful you got hired at all. That was the moment the phone camera rose higher. And that was the moment Mara realized this wasn't just a firing. This was public humiliation. And she had no idea how badly it would backfire on him. Mara walked to the staff hallway like she was floating outside her body. She could still hear the lobby murmurs behind her. She could still feel the sting in her eyes. In the employee locker room, she stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her uniform looked the same, but she didn't feel like the same person. She thought about Eli, the inhaler, the rent, the school fees. She slowly removed her name tag, Mara, and held it in her palm. A janitor nearby whispered, I'm sorry. Mara nodded, unable to speak. She changed into her old hoodie, placed her uniform carefully in her locker, and walked out the back employee exit into the cold air. Her hands were shaking. She sat on the curb behind the hotel, staring at the traffic. Her phone buzzed. A text from Eli. Sis nurse called. My breathing is tight. Can you come? Mara's chest tightened so hard it hurt. She called him immediately. Eli, use your inhaler. 2 puffs. Slow. I did, he said, voice small, but it's still hard. Mara swallowed, tears threatening. I'm coming. Okay? I'm coming. But she had no money for a ride, no job, and no way to afford another hospital bill. The world felt like a locked door, and Mara was on the outside. She stared at the hotel's tall glass windows. Inside, people smiled and laughed like nothing happened. Mr. Langston would go back to his meetings. The guests would keep spending money, and Mara would disappear. That's what usually happened to people like her. But then, quietly, something shifted. A shadow fell across her. Mara looked up. Dorothy Wells stood there, holding her worn purse, eyes soft. I'm sorry, Dorothy said. I didn't mean for you to lose your job. Mara forced a weak smile. It's not your fault. Dorothy hesitated, then sat beside her on the curb like they were equals. You stood up for me when no one else did, she said. That matters. Mara blinked. It doesn't feel like it matters. Dorothy looked at her for a long moment. Then she said very quietly, sometimes the right thing costs you first and pays you back later. Mara didn't answer, because right now, she needed help, not wisdom. and she didn't know her payback was already in motion. Inside the hotel lobby, the line moved again. Mr. Langston had returned to smiling. He spoke to a group of executives, laughing loudly like the king was back on his throne. The front desk supervisor finally typed a confirmation number into a deeper search. Her eyes widened. She leaned toward the clerk and whispered, "It's real. It's under Wells Foundation guest." The clerk's face went pale. Mr. Langston didn't notice. He was too busy. But the supervisor noticed something else. A small detail. In the reservation notes, there was a special tag. Owner request, VIP care. Her fingers froze over the keyboard. Because that tag was only used when the hotel's private ownership group personally requested a guest be treated with respect, and it had Dorothy Wells' name attached. The supervisor glanced toward the back exit, toward the door Mara had walked out of, and she looked sick with guilt. At the same time, outside, Mara helped Dorothy into a taxi. Dorothy insisted on paying for Mara's ride to pick up Eli. Mara resisted at first, but Dorothy's eyes were kind and firm. "Let me," Dorothy said. "Please." Mara accepted, heart heavy. As the taxi pulled away, Dorothy stood on the sidewalk, watching the Belmont Grand's golden doors. And then she reached into her purse. She pulled out her phone. Her hand didn't shake. Her face didn't look weak. It looked resolved. She made one call. "Hello," she said calmly. "It's Dorothy. I need you to do something for me." By evening, the video had spread. The guest who recorded it had posted it online with a caption, "Hotel manager fires cleaner for helping elderly woman. Watch this." At first, it was just a few views, then a few thousand, then, like wildfire, hundreds of thousands. People didn't just watch. They reacted. They commented. They shared. Because everyone had seen a Mara before. A quiet worker. A person trying to do the right thing. And everyone had seen a Mr. Langston too. An arrogant boss who humiliates someone because he thinks he can. The comments exploded. "This is disgusting. That girl was kind. He was cruel. Name the hotel. Let's see how VIP they feel when the world is watching." By midnight, local news accounts were reposting it. By morning, it was trending. But the real reversal didn't come from the internet. It came from the front doors of the Belmont Grand. At 7:15 a.m., Mr. Langston stepped into the lobby, coffee in hand, eyes half-focused. He noticed something odd immediately. The staff looked stiff. No one laughed. No one made eye contact. Even the security guard looked tense. Mr. Langston frowned. "What's with the funeral faces?" The front desk supervisor cleared her throat. "Sir, we have visitors." Before he could reply, the hotel's glass doors slid open, and in walked three people. Two men in dark suits. And Dorothy Wells, no worn jacket now, but still simple, still calm, walking with quiet authority. Mr. Langston blinked, confused. Dorothy didn't look at him like she was afraid. She looked at him like she owned the air in the room. One of the men stepped forward and showed a badge. "Good morning," he said. "Hotel Compliance and Licensing Board." Mr. Langston's coffee hand tightened. The other man held a folder. "And I represent the Belmont Grand Ownership Group." The words hit like a hammer. Ownership. Mr. Langston straightened his tie. "There must be some mistake. I'm the operations manager. I can..." The man cut him off smoothly. "You can step aside," he said. "We're here to review a complaint." Mr. Langston's face twitched. "A complaint? From who?" Dorothy spoke then. From the lobby, her voice was calm but clear. "From me." Every staff member froze. A housekeeper near the elevators covered her mouth. The front desk clerk stared at the floor. Mr. Langston's voice dropped. You're filing a complaint?" Dorothy tilted her head slightly. "You call me a scammer without checking your own system." Mr. Langston stammered. "Ma'am, I apologize for any confusion, but..." Dorothy raised a hand. "And you fired a cleaner for helping a guest." Mr. Langston swallowed hard. She disrupted operations. Dorothy's eyes sharpened. "No, she showed integrity, and you punished her for it. The ownership representative opened the folder. "We've reviewed the footage," he said. "We've reviewed internal tags on the reservation, and we've reviewed your history." Mr. Langston's confidence wavered. "My history?" The representative nodded. "Complaints, staff turnover, past incidents of public humiliation." Mr. Langston's mouth opened, then closed. Dorothy stepped forward one slow step. "Do you know why my reservation was tagged?" she asked. Mr. Langston stared, confused. Dorothy looked around the lobby, at staff, guests, cameras, phones. Then she said the words that made the whole building feel different. "Because I'm Dorothy Wells, and the Wells Foundation is one of the Belmont Grand's largest investors." Air left the room. Not dramatic, not loud, just gone. Mr. Langston's face drained of color. A guest whispered, "Wait." Wells Foundation. Another guest pulled out a phone again. The ownership representative spoke, like a judge reading a sentence. "Mr. Langston," he said, "you are suspended effective immediately." Mr. Langston stumbled. "Suspended? You can't. I run this place." The compliance officer stepped closer. "Actually, we can, and we will." Mr. Langston's eyes darted wildly. "This is because of a viral video? That's ridiculous." Dorothy's voice stayed calm. "No," she said. "This is because you forgot that people are human." Then she turned to the ownership rep. "Where's Mara Rivera?" Dorothy asked. The supervisor spoke up quickly, voice shaking. "She was fired yesterday, ma'am." "She left." Dorothy nodded. "Find her." Mr. Langston snapped. "Desperate now. She has no right. She broke protocol." Dorothy looked at him, expression steady. "And you broke character," she said. "You showed the world who you are." Then she leaned in just slightly, not to threaten, but to make sure he heard her. "You didn't fire a cleaner," Dorothy said. "You fired the last bit of decency this hotel had left." And then she walked past him like he was invisible. Mara didn't know any of this. She spent the night at the clinic with Eli, holding his hand while his breathing finally eased. She barely slept. In the morning, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She ignored it. It buzzed again. Then again. Finally, she answered, voice tired. "Hello, is this Mara Rivera?" A woman asked. "Yes." "This is the Belmont Grand HR department." The woman said carefully, "We need you to come in immediately." Mara's stomach dropped. "I don't work there anymore." There was a pause. "Please," the woman said. "It's important." Mara hesitated. Then she looked at Eli, asleep now, breathing steady. She whispered, "Okay." When Mara arrived at the Belmont Grand, she didn't enter through the front doors. Not at first. She stood across the street, staring at the hotel like it was an enemy. She could still hear Mr. Langston's voice in her head. "Poor girls like you." She hugged her hoodie tighter and forced herself to walk in. Inside, the lobby felt different. Quiet, tense. People watched her, but not with laughter, with something else. Respect and guilt. The front desk supervisor rushed over. "Mara," she said quickly, "I'm so sorry. I should have spoken up." Mara blinked. "What's going on?" The supervisor swallowed. "Just come." Mara was led into the conference room. Inside, Dorothy Wells sat at the table. Beside her, the ownership representative. Across from them, Mr. Langston, no longer standing tall. Now seated, shoulders tight, eyes tired, jaw clenched. Mara froze at the door. Dorothy stood gently. "Mara." Mara's voice came out thin. "Ma'am, I didn't." Dorothy lifted a hand. "You did exactly what you should have done." Mara stared, confused. The ownership representative spoke. "Mara Rivera," he said, "we've reviewed the incident. We've reviewed your employment record. You have 0 complaints and consistent high reviews." Mr. Langston shifted uncomfortably. The representative continued. "Mr. Langston is being removed from his position." Mara's eyes widened. Mr. Langston snapped, "That's not final." The compliance officer, standing near the wall, cut in. "It is." Silence settled. "Heavy." Dorothy stepped closer to Mara. I came here for the summit, Dorothy said. I wanted to see how this hotel treated people when no one important was watching. Mara's throat tightened. Dorothy's eyes softened. And you, Dorothy said, were the only person who treated me like I mattered. Mara swallowed hard. I just didn't want you to be embarrassed. Dorothy nodded. That's the point. Then Dorothy turned slightly to the ownership rep. Tell her. The representative opened a folder. We would like to offer you your job back, he said. Mara's chest tightened. With a raise, he added. Mara looked at Mr. Langston instinctively. His eyes were fixed on the table. The representative continued. And we are also offering to sponsor your certification course, hospitality management training, fully paid. Mara blinked, stunned. Dorothy added softly, and Eli's medical bills from last night will be covered to the Wells Foundation Community Care Program. Mara's eyes filled instantly. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. I don't understand. Dorothy smiled gently. You will. Mara's hands trembled. Why are you doing this? Dorothy's tone stayed simple. Because you didn't let the world make you cold, she said. And because people like you keep places like the standing. Mr. Langston suddenly cleared his throat, voice strained. Dorothy looked at him. Say it, Dorothy said calmly. Mr. Langston's jaw tightened. His pride fought him. Everyone could see it. Then, finally, he forced the words out. I apologize, he said, not looking at Mara, for what I said, for how I acted. Dorothy didn't move. Louder, she said, and look at her. Mr. Langston flinched like he'd been hit. Slowly, he raised his eyes to Mara. His face was pale now. I apologize, he said again louder. I was wrong. Mara felt something strange in her chest. Not victory, not revenge. Relief. Dorothy nodded once. Good. Then she looked at Mara. And one more thing, Dorothy said. Mara blinked. Dorothy smiled. I want you to join the staff advisory board. Mara stared. Me? Dorothy nodded. So the next Mara doesn't get crushed in silence. Mara's throat tightened again. She nodded slowly. Okay. Dorothy's smile warmed. Welcome back. Mara walked out of that room, feeling like she had stepped out of a storm. People in the lobby looked at her differently now. A housekeeper whispered, That's Mara. A front desk clerk nodded politely. Even a guest gave her a small smile. Mara didn't feel powerful because someone else got punished. She felt powerful because she was finally seen. Sometimes, the world teaches people to stay quiet, to keep their heads down, to watch injustice happen and pretend it's not their problem. But one small act of goodness can crack the whole system. Mara didn't have money. She didn't have a title. She didn't have power. She only had courage and a heart that refused to look away. And that was enough to change everything. So here's the lesson. Never judge a person by their uniform. Never mistake silence for weakness. And never forget that kindness has consequences, sometimes painful first, but powerful in the end. If this story moved you, comment where you're watching from, and tell me, would you have spoken up or stayed quiet? If this story touched your heart, like and subscribe for more powerful stories of courage, justice, and unexpected reversals. And don't forget, comment where you're watching from. Your support helps keep these stories coming.